I've started 2 or 3 times to try and speak on what I guess I've kept buried for so long. I didn't realize that I had such a low opinion of myself until other people formed one for me. And even that didn't make sense. I was raised by an amazing single mom. But for the first 8 or 9 years of my life, I didn't know that a father was supposed to live in the house with you. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I had male role models. So I knew love from that aspect. But it wasn't until I was, in school and they started asking questions about, who your father was. Well, I knew his first name, but I didn't really know anything else. So I asked about that. And as more questions were asked, I realized that maybe I had questions too. I just didn't know what they were, because I guess I wasn't mature enough to formulate a question. So I just suppressed it. Once I found out that my father lived 10 minutes from where I lived with my mom, then there were more questions. I had seen him with a lady, I guess his wife, and 2 other children. I didn't really, understand what was happening until I started asking more questions and noticing more things. And I know that as a girl, your father is usually the one that teaches you how you should be treated by a man, how you should be respected and lifted up and placed on a pedestal and treated like a queen, treated like you matter. And as I started realizing this, that this person that was half responsible for my very existence, I didn't know. And I guess he didn't know me. He knew of me. He knew that he had a daughter. He didn't deny it, but it's one of those things that, being a kid in the 60s and 70s, it's like there's certain things that you ask and you get answers to, and other things or just kind of withheld, I imagine, until you're old enough to process it. So I already felt like, I had no self-esteem because I was an only child, and I spent a lot of time by myself. And I was happy as a kid at home because everything was great. But when I would go to school, I was that kid. There was no one to stick up for me. There was no older sibling that, I could talk to. And so I just started to shrink. I didn't want to stand out. As I said, I prayed multiple times to just disappear. I said, God, please let me disappear, and I'll never ask you for another thing as long as I live. My home life was good. But growing up in a small rural town, I would see my father, my sperm donor, as I called him, weekly. And there he was with the woman that he did marry, and those children that he was being a father to. that he never checked on me. So I never seemed important enough for a phone call or a visit. He didn't know if I was being mistreated or anything, and didn't care enough to find out. And that's one of the things that was really a gut punch. So if I wasn't worth anything to one of the people responsible for my existence, how could I be worth anything to anyone else? How could I expect for a man to treat me like a queen when I never had a father who treated me like a princess? So this followed me for decades, literally. I always wanted to shrink. I didn't want to call any unnecessary attention to myself because I didn't think I deserved it. I never felt worthy because, in some cases, how can you feel worthy when one of your parents doesn't care whether or not you exist, or you're alive or dead? Now, he may not have felt that way, but how was I to know? He didn't talk to me. So I was very shy and reserved for a very long time by thinking that I just was not enough. I was not worthy. I was worth less than the average kid who had two parents because they both cared enough to stay. That's why I would give my mother a Father's Day card, because she was playing the role of both people and she should not have had to do that. But she did and never complained. So it took me some decades to actually realize that I am worthy. Even though I didn't meet him until I was 14. He never told me that. And so for years I expected it to come from a person outside of myself because I didn't see it in me. So I went for years without looking at myself in the mirror. And trust me, it's possible. You look over your eyes to fix your hair. You look below your neck to ensure that your clothes are on straight. Never look directly at your reflection because I didn't like the person staring back at me. Other people judged her, so I wasn't sure how I felt about her, so I didn't want to look at her. Thankfully, in time, through work, self-love, I started paying attention to me. And I started trying to come back to myself. And it's a long way to travel because I never knew where I was, so it was kind of hard trying to figure out where to start. So it was one day at a time, 1 minute, one trait, acts of kindness to me because I was a good person and I deserved them. I had to convince myself of that. But it's possible. It took a few decades. But I like me now. I'm not going to say it was easy. It wasn't. This has to be something you want to do. I wanted to do it. And I'm hoping that maybe what I've been through will help you with what you're going through. Know that you're worthy. No one else defines your worth. That is for you. Another person's opinion of you is just that. It's their opinion. And it's none of your business. So don't let it bother you. the opinion of you that should matter most is yours.